Africans. Firstly, we've been able to increase the proportion of complete addresses from 34% in March 2016 to 75% currently. So 75% of all registered voters who are on a voter's roll, we have a complete address for them. And that's about 19 million of the 25 million voters. We've also been able to reduce the proportion of incomplete or generic addresses from 34% to 14%. We've reduced this from 8.6 million in March 2016 to about 3.5 million currently. We've also reduced the percentage of registered voters without any recorded addresses from 32% to 11% currently. Despite this significant progress, the Electoral Commission still does not have addresses for 2.8 million voters. And a further 3.5 million addresses are currently classified as incomplete or generic. We remind South Africans that the voters' roll is a fundamental safeguard for free and fair elections. It's an instrument for facilitating electoral participation, which is placed at the disposal of political parties for campaign purposes. It also serves a functional purpose as a planning tool for accurate provision of electoral logistics and material, as well as the avoidance of electoral fraud. We once again urge all voters to make every effort to visit their voting stations during this coming weekend. We, the Electoral Commission, are ready to open all voting stations this weekend from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. for all voters to easily update their address details on the roll, and for first-time voters to register in preparation of the elections next year. Now, we need voters to show up and make use of this opportunity. We wish to highlight the fact that given the high caller demand to date, the Electoral Commission's contact center, which can be reached by dialing 0800 11 8000, will be open from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. from today until Friday, and on the weekend from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. on both days. This is intended to assist voters to find their correct voting station and to answer any queries that voters may have relating to the entire electoral process. The Department of Home Affairs has, as always, offered the Electoral Commission its full cooperation in the registration initiative. It has indicated that it will open its offices from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. on both the 10th and 11th of March 2018 to facilitate the following processes: the collection of the green barcoded IT books and smart ID cards, the immediate issuance of temporary identification certificates. Voters can inquire about the status of their ID and ID and smart cards without physically visiting Home Affairs offices by simply SMSing the word ID followed by your ID number to 32551. They can also call the Home Affairs Contact Center on 0800 860 1190. Finally, we would like to remind voters that the Electoral Commission's online facility, available at My IEC on our website, remains active for registered voters with access to the internet to check and update or provide their addresses online. Should they be unable to visit their correct voting station this weekend. These voters are also urged to update their details before the end of May 2018. As our communications campaign has been saying, let's address the voters' roll together, South Africa, this is the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mamabolo. I'm going to open the floor for questions, for clarification, or for any matter. Please introduce yourself, and then from then pose your question. I've got a question there. Tula? Yeah, press to go green, yeah.
Thank you for that update. Let me start with a question about the process itself, the voter registration process. There's something you mentioned there about there's no need for proof of residential address. A quick question then comes up that says, are you not concerned about the possibility of, strategic shifting of voters to influence regional and, possibly provincial voting dynamics, and how does that impact on the outcome being a fair reflection of the will of the people of a particular region and province? And that's a process question that I'm asking. Then the other question that's unavoidable is has to do with the issue of the two Gupta brothers, Odul and Ajay. The Minister of Home Affairs insists they're not South African citizens. There are ID numbers out there that are said to be theirs. When those are entered into your system of the IEC, they come back and say they are registered voters. I imagine that you would want to absolutely clarify this, because it's either you have people who are not of South African citizens voting, or the population register, national population register, cannot be depended upon. So please take us into your confidence, clarify for us once and for all, are Atul and Ajay Gupta registered South African voters?
Any other question? Yes, ma'am.
Learning that from independent media. I just want to find out about the entire process as well. So obviously this is a combination of a 2-year process to ensure that you get the complete addresses on the voters roll, am I right?
Yes.
But I want to find out what the process entails, because it's not quite clear. I mean, in terms of, I was on the IEC Facebook today and people were saying, well, I don't have an address, I live at a shack, I don't have a definite address. How then do I visit, where do I register? So I want to find out, how then did you get those addresses? And secondly, are you confident that comes up to 2018 you will be able to ensure that the 2.8 million of voters, or addresses rather, that you will be able to get, that you will get, as set up at the Constitutional Court? Yeah.
Any other question before we answer the 4 questions? Let me proceed and...
Let's go to the Vice Chair and Commissioner Love.
Let me deal with the first question first, which is the matter relating to proof of residence. The legislation does not require a voter to give us a proof of residence when they register. And I think it is largely because you are trying to accommodate every person who is a South African as per the Constitution. Some of the people might not necessarily have properties, they might not have anything that they can actually be able to give to you as proof of residence. It does happen. But we are guided by the Constitution in terms of the determination of who qualifies for registration. And it says in the Constitution that you must be a South African and must be 18 years old in order to be able to participate in the elections. So for those individuals, such as in Tlokwe, where we had experiences of people who have been passed by either a candidate or political parties, if such people are identified, it is going to be regarded as fraud, and then it's a criminal offense, and we will be able to take action against those individuals. But I think the political parties and the majority of our people now are aware that it is something that is highly discouraged because it can land a person in prison. So we still operate on the basis of bona fides. We accept what the person is giving us at that voting station. But of course, in a situation where you find that a great number of people all of a sudden moves from one area to the other, you will be able to detect that there must be something wrong in that instance, and therefore we are able to investigate, and appropriate action is then, we are able to take appropriate action. On the issue of the Gupta brothers, I must indicate that we've been receiving queries from quite a number of people, and we're given a number, an ID number to check in our system. And some of the people have said to them that they must actually check, because we have provided a facility to South Africans to say, if you've got an ID number, you can forward that number to 32810 and you will get feedback. If you are properly registered, your details will immediately come to you to indicate that you are indeed registered. So after we were requested by some people to check the certain details, and after they checked, they forwarded the information to us that this appears to be a legitimate registration. And we can confirm that indeed a certain Atul Gupta is properly registered at a primary school in Saxonwold. In order for a person to register, you've got to be a South African citizen, and you've got to be in possession of either a barcoded ID, or alternatively, you've got to have a smart card. Those are the only things that we require from our side. But an important element also is that to register, you've got to present yourself in person. So you can't say that someone took your ID and registered somewhere. So, and I'm only responding to the fact that we were given an ID. We can only use an ID to make a determination as to whether a person is properly registered. So I can confirm that indeed a certain Mr. Atul Gupta is a registered voter and is properly registered in Saxonwold.
Just to accentuate the point that the Vice Chairperson is making, the custodian of citizenship in the Republic vests with the Department of Home Affairs. So when we've received applications, before we place you on the voters roll, we do confirm your citizenship. We don't take it for granted. We do confirm it against the National Population Register. There's a technical process that we've worked out through a protocol with the Department of Home Affairs, where we verify the citizenship of voters with the National Population Register, which they're responsible for. We've had discussions with the Director General at the department in the course of today, and he does confirm that their records and our records in relation to the question that the Vice Chair was dealing with are aligned. So there isn't any discrepancies in relation to their records vis-a-vis our records. Commissioner Love?
Do you want me to deal with the second one? Sorry.
I can deal with it. Yeah.
Sure. With regard to the 2-year process, the question that was asked, what happens if somebody is living in an informal settlement, doesn't have a very clear street address and so on. This was an issue that was raised before the Constitutional Court as one of the key problems. And what we've done from our side is to ensure that in the form that is provided, there is a space for additional information which is more descriptive, as opposed to a very rigid kind of structure of a number and a street and so on, which may not always exist. I think what's very important in the whole process is a recognition that, and it relates also to the issue of proof of address, is that part of our process is to ensure that we have a voter's roll that is available to political parties and people who are contesting elections, precisely to enable the population as a whole. We are all responsible for ensuring our free and proper elections and our democracy, to enable every stakeholder to assess whether or not this voters' roll stands the test of what they know of an area. So the consequence of that is that it means that we're providing enough information to ensure that people who are from the area, who work within the area, who are political parties, who have a stake in ensuring that the democratic will of the people is exercised, will be able to give us the feedback, particularly if, for example, there are breaches. So I think that the issue of not having a complete address can, and you're correct in indicating, it will be a problem, and this is the way in which we have attempted to deal with it. The second thing is in relation to June, the Constitutional Court order. Clearly, this registration weekend is a very important part of our attempt to engage the people of South Africa in working together with us to ensure that we have an election that really demonstrates the will of the people. And this is really why we also appreciate the media and various elements of civil society in their efforts to help us, because it's vital for people to come forward. We can't disenfranchise people, but we really need to make sure that our voters' roll is a voters' roll that has the greatest integrity possible. And what we need to produce to the Constitutional Court is an indication of how far we've gone. We hope that we'll be able to produce 100%, but if not, we need to be able to demonstrate to the Constitutional Court also that we are taking steps and did take steps in our local government elections and have at by-elections to ensure that if you come to our voting stations, for example, on a day when there's a by-election and we do not have a full address for you, at that point before voting, you will complete the form so that we can again capture it. So I think that what we are demonstrating along the way is our intention to all the time upgrade our voters' roll to being a kind of role that we all feel has the necessary integrity. I think I've dealt with both of your questions.
Just to come back to the issue that we're dealing with in terms of the requirements for registration. For ease of reference, you can go to Section 6.1 of the Electoral Act. Section 6.1 says that for a person to qualify as a voter, that person must be a South African and must be 18 years old and must come to the voting station or registration station with a barcoded ID or alternatively a smart card. Now, if you go also to Section 8.1 of the Electoral Act, and this is important because we are dealing here with legal matters here. The Section 8.1 will inform you that the Chief Electoral Officer, in our case, Mr. Simon Mamabolo here, that he's got to satisfy himself that the minimum requirements. Those minimum requirements are the requirements as contained in Section 6.1 of the Electoral Act, which says that you must be a South African, and then you must be 18 years old, and then you must have an ID and present yourself in person.
Alrighty, okay.
I have a follow-up question. Besides the point of what is required by the Constitutional Court. Now, the complete address is still at 75%, am I correct? I just want to find out, is the IEC under pressure to really ensure that they get all the addresses? And the reason why I'm asking this is that you want to have an integrous voters roll and present to political parties, and yet you only have 2 days that you've committed to ensure that. I just want to find out, are you under pressure? Because, you have incomplete addresses. We want to avoid the situation of Provway. So I just want to find out, do you feel pressurized, or are you confident that you make it? You understand it?
Let me deal with that question very quickly. We've been working on this project for 2 years. It's not 2 days only that we have dedicated for this. And every by-election, we've been opening our registration station and saying to people, please come and register. So it's a project that we've been focused on for 2 years. We've been giving the reports on a 6-monthly basis to the Constitutional Court. And Constitutional Court has not raised an issue about the reports that we've been submitting to them. So we will still submit a report in June as the requirement. And the issue of compliance with Section 16.3, it's an issue, it is not us just trying to comply with the Constitutional Court. It is there in law that we must have the addresses. If you go to law, you go to the Electoral Act, Section 16.3, it says that we must have a voter's roll with addresses. We are confident, as Commissioner Laff was saying, that we will be able to reach our target. We will be able to get every person on the voter's roll having the addresses, because it is the requirement in terms of Section 16.3. So, in case we do not reach this, we will cross that bridge when we come to it. But for now, we are confident. We're opening all our registration stations, and we are here to urge everybody to be part of it, to go to all the registration stations, to be part of this process, to submit and update their details at the registration station. It is because of this that we believe that we will be able to reach our target.
Let me take, I've got 2 hands before we wrap up, and then afterwards, Caesar.
Thanks, SABC. I just wanted to find out, in terms of the registered voters, is it important, is it a requirement for them to go to voting stations where they registered, as in the case during the local government elections, or with the national elections, can they go to any other of the over 22,000 voting stations that are there?
Do you want to take the other question?
Tulasi's, I think, had a hand. Yes.
Sure. Just to follow up on the question that I asked earlier and that you addressed now, Deputy Chair. May I suggest that you have too much faith in the goodness of political players to know that it is fraud to bus people in. And I suppose you'd want to comment to that it's too much faith in them, simply accepting the bona fides that, well, people want to do it because they know it's fraud. And I don't know, recent experience suggests that you're trusting them too much. I'd like your comment on that. But also going back to the...
All right, we're taking you out of that because we've got to get to that other briefing by the Deputy Chief Justice. Let me quickly take you through some of the points that came out of that. The IEC's Chief Electoral Officer, Saima Mabolo, saying that it's all systems go for this registration weekend. People can check their addresses and register to vote. All 22,000 voting stations will be open from 8 to 5 p.m. This weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And people must visit their voting stations where they live and bring along their ID documents, and all voters, he's urged to make every effort to visit their voting stations this weekend to update their addresses or register for the first time if needed.
About the international citizens or people abroad, what are some of the plans put in place for them that basically want to vote next year, come next year, in 2019?
In our interaction with the Department of Home Affairs, we looked at 3 ID numbers belonging to Mr. Ajay Gupta, Mr. Atul Gupta, and Rajesh Gupta. Mr. Ajay Gupta is not a citizen, and it's not on the voters' roll, rather. Remember, I said the custodianship of citizenship vests with Home Affairs. So I'm addressing myself to the voters' roll. Mr. Ajay is not on the voters' roll. We can confirm that Mr. Atul Gupta is on the voters' roll, as is Mr. Rajesh Gupta.
You want to deal with the best?
Yeah, I can deal with the best. Or do you want to deal with international first?
No, deal with the international. No, deal with the international.
You do.
Okay. With respect to facilities for South Africans who are ordinarily resident outside of the Republic, we are in discussions with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to set up dates on which registration opportunities will be accorded to them. So those discussions are inconclusive at this moment, but will soon be finalized and appropriate announcements will be made with respect to that. But there will be opportunities for them.
And just to add on to that aspect as well is that remember that ordinarily what we do in registering or allowing the South Africans who are brought an opportunity to participate in the elections, we use the South African embassies. Now, immediately after 2014 elections, the High Commission in London did send a request to say, you've got the far-flung areas where people have got to travel long distances in order for them to come and participate in the process. Is it possible for you to increase the number of the stations in these areas in order for us to be able to take care of such individuals? We indicated that we are unable to do that at this stage because we're only using the South African offices. So, but nevertheless, we went to the Department of International Relations to also make a request that they must extend the number of infrastructure in these countries so that we can be able to allow as many South Africans as possible an opportunity to participate in the process. The issue of busing and the trust, of course, the legislation is structured in such a manner that we have got to trust our partners, the political parties that we are working with, but we're going to be very, very firm in areas where there is a violation, and then once it comes to our attention, very stern action will be taken by the Commission against the culprits.
Maybe just to add on the question of trust. I think that the question of trust is also a trust in the reality that we are a democracy, and so that there are different political parties contesting. And that very contest gives us some kind of assurance that there will be vigilance, each upon the other. And that's very important for a democratic process. So I think it's also trust in that part of the process.
CEO, can you please answer the question from that gentleman around the ability to register where you are, where you are?
Yes, thank you very much, Nomsa. The law provides that you register in the VD, in a voting district in which you are ordinarily resident, irrespective of the fact that it's a national, provincial, or municipal election. So this weekend, the call is for all South Africans to go to the voting station in the voting district in which they live, because that's where the law expects them to be registered.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've covered all the questions and all issues of clarity. Allow me to bring this press briefing to an end, but as you know, the work is only beginning, and we've got a long weekend ahead, but I know I trust on our relationship to ensure that we send the message to as many South Africans as possible. When we open our voting stations on Saturday and Sunday, I believe that we're going to be doing and working in partnership for the coming weekend. Thank you so much for coming through to the Electoral Commission.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Other African languages from SABC? Or you are covered? No. You are covered, okay.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, thank you so much. Mama, yes, I'm good. Commissioner
Janet Love.
Yeah, Commissioner Janet Love, J-A-N-E-T. J-A-N-E-T, L-O-V-E. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Are you all tangled up? All the time.
your CEO and chair. Ne? We're trying to check your.
I think since I'm in 6:15. Oh, okay. Not a problem. They'll call me on my cell phone. Okay. Yeah, because it's early in the morning. It will be before I get to the office.
Good.
Our phone system.
Yeah, no, we covered. I'm going to talk to some guy who works on a weekend.